President Buhari confers various national honors on Nigerians. He states commitment on handing over a nation free of insecurity.
The patriotic Nigerians and our friends honored today have distinguished themselves in various ways for the purpose of creating a new Nigeria.
We want to expedite action on it so that we can quickly finish the debate and commit the bill to the various committees.
House of Representatives to commence debate on 2023 appropriation bill.
African women leaders converge in Burundi for promotion of mothers and children nutrition in Africa.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on tackling massive crude oil theft in Nigeria.
Well, it indeed appears the nation's black gold is in dire need of redemption as Nigeria loses about 600,000 barrels of crude oil per day to oil theft and illegal bunkering, which translates to over 5.9 trillion naira annually.
Well, Kirian, this staggering figure from the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited suggests a national emergency, as described recently by the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Tibepe Silva, who regretted that Nigeria had fallen short of the OPEC daily quota of 1.8 million barrels per day to round about 1.3 million barrels. And some of the figures indeed said that we're doing already below 1 million barrels per day. No thanks, of course, in part to oil theft.
Well, yes, indeed, Kingsley, there are conflicting figures indeed, in respect to the level of crude oil theft in the country and the corresponding losses in monetary terms. In recent times, experts are of the opinion that the federal government must adopt a proactive and aggressive means of checkmating oil theft amid dwindling revenue occasioned by production or reduction in the oil production capacity. But I ask one question, Kingsley, when you say that the reduction in production is as a result of oil theft, does it mean that the stock is diminishing in terms of what we have, the reserve that we have? Why would that's stealing, but you're also doing your job? So does it mean that we have a reduction actually in the oil base that we have?
No. It is nothing to do. It has nothing to do with our oil reserves or the reservoir, the extent of our reservoir. What you are able to take out, that's what counts as your production.
Exactly.
Yeah. What you take out, and then what you are also able to export or make available for export. But it's not as if you drill a well and then you have a wellhead and then all your oil is in that particular location. You have a network of pipelines.
Exactly.
So it is in the course of transporting the crude that you have produced
that
to go to the various export terminals.
Exactly.
That is where the crooks have come in to puncture
the pipelines,
the main trunk lines, and then begin to siphon.
Exactly.
So if ordinarily you had produced, let's say, 1.8 million barrels, which is the OPEC quota,
exactly,
but what you are able to then take to the export terminal is around about 1.4 or sometimes 1.3. These days it's come down to less than $1 million. Sorry, a million barrels per day. Now, an economic report for the first quarter of this year, 2022, from the Central Bank of Nigeria reveals that earnings from crude oil fell to 790 billion naira from 1.1 trillion naira, as against the previous quarter in 2021.
And NNPC Limited boss, Mayor Mele Kyari, during the 49th session of the State House briefing at the Presidential Villa, identified oil theft as a major factor for drop in production.
Well, the federal government obviously is worried by the widespread nature of oil theft, especially through the product pipelines. Now, recently, the federal government considered and then approved pipeline surveillance contracts in a bid to stem the ugly trend.
Incidentally, the choice of one of the beneficiaries of the contracts, former leader of the movement for the emancipation of Niger Delta government, Bemi Polo, popularly known as Tompolo, is fueling different reactions. But KR insists it is the right decision.
It's turning out to be so, from the reports that we have had lately. Now, but while the debate is still on regarding who ordinarily should have been awarded a contract, a few days ago, NNPC Limited uncovered a 4-kilometer illegal oil connection line from Forcados Terminal into the sea, which had been in operation for many years, but without being detected. And of course, the detection now came during the clampdown in the past 6 weeks, thanks, it is said, to the efforts of the new contractor for the pipeline surveillance system.
No, what I also asking, I mean, Nigerians would like to ask is, does it mean that we never had the capacity to carry out air surveillance that they did now to discover those who are doing this? Because if that had been done in the past, of course, there's the possibility of, nipping this in the bud, or even getting them before over, you say 9 years or something? 9 years of a consecutive, oil stealing in that part of the country. Well, according to NNPC, this was achieved during an aerial surveillance, which I just mentioned, with a shocking discovery that the economic saboteurs carry out these nefarious activities unchallenged and uninterrupted. Of course, it raised another issue of the possibility of connivance, by those who insiders, who should actually be the people to stop that menace. They're encouraging it. And that is why people say, look, sometimes if you're working in the Navy and you're posted to Niger Delta, you are made. We have had such stories in the past, considering what is happening at the moment.
Medicare also did indicate that the nature of the illegal connections suggested that these were jobs that were done by professionals.
Exactly.
Now, we understand that some 600 cubic meters of illegally no, that's not cubic liters. Cubic meters will relate to gas. That's it's measured in cubic feet, and so on and so forth. But we understand, of course, that over 600,000 barrels of crude oil, of course, have been seized after it was discovered to have been illegally loaded on a vessel along the Warri River. And of course, this was being diverted, it is claimed, to Ghana, and this was on account of the activities of the new surveillance company on the pipelines and the waterways in the Niger Delta.
Oh yeah, now Nigeria has been groaning under this weight of oil theft and illegal bunkering for 2 decades, but in recent years, observers say the dimension has been on a grand scale, and the government wants to take up its challenge to restoring the lost glory.
Well, Kirian, we do know that the consequences of the oil theft are there for all of us to see. I mean, you have a rich country in resources, but the resources, of course, are not being fully utilized, as it were, for the benefit of the citizens because of, in part, these many leakages that we have seen. So if we have the capacity of producing, say, there was a time we were doing well over 2 million barrels per day of crude oil. And once it affects our foreign reserves, we have pressure on the foreign reserves, we have pressure on the naira, and then we have inflationary pressure, the misery index grows, and so on.
Again, you can't just be producing, having a product to produce, and you're not, checkmating or protecting the product itself, because that is the number one. If you don't protect that product...
How did we let our guard down?
Exactly, and some persons have also indicated the fact that there are, like you said, insiders, who are given the responsibility to checkmate this, but there are also partakers in it, because there's no way a ship can come into Nigerian waters without being detected. I mean, on daily basis. Have a radar that monitors all entrances, from every part of Nigeria's, waterways. And I wonder why that could not be detected until 9 years.
Well, Kirian, that's just only one aspect of the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta is a vast location in the country. But as the federal government intensifies its onslaught on crude oil theft, we have to ask the question, what went wrong in the past and how sustainable can the fight be? And what is the responsibility of all citizens with regard to dealing with these criminal elements who are sabotaging the economy and making everyone else except themselves the poorer for it? That's our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today, as we assemble our guests to discuss issues around the massive crude oil theft in the Niger Delta. Welcome to the program. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
Hi, I'm Kirian Umaya. We are live on the network service of the NTA. I will bring you our usual complimentary segments at the appropriate time. For now, we shall have the news highlights with Anne Jibono. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning. Here's the news. 447 Nigerians and foreigners alike who distinguished themselves in the service of the nation and humanity were formally recognized and rewarded with Nigeria's National Honors Awards. Amongst the recipients was Imam Abdullahi Abubakar, a Muslim cleric in Plateau State who put his life on the line to save 262 Christians from the jaws of death. President Muhammadu Buhari, who decorated the awardees with their titles of honor, used the opportunity to review his commitment to handing over a Nigeria that is free of insecurity to the next generation of political leaders.
The patriotic Nigerians and our friends honored today have distinguished themselves in various ways for the purpose of creating a new Nigeria of our dreams through respect for the rule of law, image laundering, transparency, and accountability.
Meanwhile, the National Association of Women Journalists, NAWOJ, has commended the conferment of national honors on journalists. A statement by the NAWOJ National President, Ladi Bala, particularly pleased with the award on the immediate past Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, and seasoned administrator, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, the special advisor on media and publicity to the President, and former President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Femi Adesina. The National President, Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, Chris Isiguzo, and the former President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Halilu Ibrahim Dantiye. The deserving awards on these distinguished journalists is a clear testament of the fact that the role of journalists and the media at large is in the development of the country is accorded genuine recognition and appreciation by the government, the statement added. First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, has arrived Bujumbura, capital of Burundi, ahead of high-level forum of African women leaders towards promoting the state of health and nutrition of women, mothers, children and adolescents in Africa.
We share strong ties as she is the president of MIPREDA, the African First Ladies Peace Mission. As you are aware, all the First Ladies are the mothers of the various nations. And our aim and goal is to make sure that no child sleeps with hunger. And we also help the children not to suffer from malnutrition.
The International Monetary Fund says rising food prices and currency depreciations will continue to affect economies globally, warning that the worst is yet to come if urgent steps are not taken to address debts, inflation and instability. This was at the presentation of the World Economic Outlook at the annual meetings in Washington, D.C.
There are clouds on the horizon, but progress on climate policies, debt resolution, and other targeted global issues will demonstrate that strengthened cooperation can achieve progress for all.
The higher interest rates, low growth means that 2/3 of the countries in the regions are facing stress or debt distress.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives will commence debate on the 2023 appropriation bill this Wednesday. The Deputy Speaker, Ahmed Idris Wase, who announced this on Tuesday's plenary, says it is to keep to the Green Chamber's commitment to ensure early passage.
We want to expedite action on it so that we can quickly finish the debate and commit the bill to the various committees so that we can have their report turned in and do justice to it before the end of the year.
Nigeria is making efforts to deal with maritime crimes, one of the modern challenges affecting the Gulf of Guinea. The Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit is adequately engaged and is working against illegal exploits of the coastal environment.
littoral countries, the coastal countries of the ECOWAS region. Some of them are much more dependent on this sort of external support than a powerful nation like Nigeria. But in the name of equity, everybody is a beneficiary.
Take, for example, Guinea-Bissau has about 88 islands, and most of those islands are uninhabited. And there is hue and cry about how criminals are probably misusing those islands.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after this break. Do stay with us.
Esther, you're late again. Esther?
She's a wandering light in the darkness. She's beautiful. Oh, she's a superstar.
Morning, Esther.
She never let her mama down. She's beautiful.
No phones at the table, please. Esther. I love you too.
Got everything? Don't forget I'll pick you at 4.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The security challenges we are faced as a government have been daunting. From terrorism to banditry, to kidnapping, to separatist violence, to crude oil theft, to armed robbery and sundry crimes. It's undoubtedly the greatest challenge to the peace and security of our great country since the Civil War of 1967 to 1970. It is a kind of challenge that would have overwhelmed many nations. But thanks to the purposeful leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, we can say, I want to repeat, that the worst is over, and peace and security are gradually returning to the land.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has presented the 2023-2027 trade policy draft. We have details of that story with our correspondent, Alika Okpanachi Arua.
The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment is expediting review of the country's trade policy in line with global best practice. This is in a bid to promote conducive atmosphere and boost trade for socio-economic development. To this end, the Committee on the Review of Nigeria's 2023-2027 Trade Policy has submitted its draft review to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Adeniyi Adebayo.
In order to take advantage of this potential $3.4 trillion market, the first step is to instill confidence in traders through the approval and implementation of an up-to-date trade policy. Therefore, an updated trade policy is clearly overdue.
We know that the economy has changed drastically since the last trade policy. The DG has mentioned that a rapid transformation of the Nigerian economy.
The policy, if approved by the Federal Executive Council, will provide the needed opportunities for businesses to thrive, reduce poverty, and promote creation of wealth for the development of the country. With Business News, Alika Okpanachi Arua.
Thank you, Alika, for that report. And next on our show is Newspaper Review.
All right, so we'll take a look at the window pages of the papers we have this morning. And for the Daily Trust newspaper, the lead story is obviously taken from the National Honors Award ceremonies that took place yesterday. National Honors, not for decoration, Buhari tells recipients. How awardees were selected, and recognition, a call to duty. These are the riders to the headline. National Honors, not for decoration, Buhari tells recipients. And above that says 14 days after, Tinubu, Obi, Kwankwanso yet to commence campaigns. ASU to decide on strike tomorrow. IMF says more than a third of world economies to contract in 2023. And then on the left-hand side, that's the first two columns there, it says cholera kills 233 in 31 states as 173 die of Lassa fever. So cholera deaths already well over 230 and Lassa fever over 170. We follow due process in acquiring Abuja cement plant. That's according to Dangote. 2023, CDD pledges to remain neutral and independent. And flawed, and that's where the real havoc is now. 500 dead, 1.4 million affected in 31 states and Abuja. And this attributed to the federal government. 500 dead already, and 1.4 million, of course, displaced. And you can see the two riders there, over 146,000 hectares of farmlands, and nearly 90,000 houses have been damaged. And more states to be affected. And it's according to NIMET and NISA. NISA is the Hydrological Services Agency. Kiran.
All right, now let's turn to Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera newspaper this morning. And from top to bottom, Buhari confers national honors on Abba Kyari and 446 others. That's on page 9 of Al Jazeera. Transport logistics companies decry revenue losses as flood cripples businesses. That's on page 24. On page 11, 100 million naira of 1.1 billion looted funds went to Obasanjo's re-election, according to Darie. All right, and Minister receives draft copy of Nigeria's trade policy. It's on page 25. Before I continue with that, let's get the lead story on Al Jazeera. It says, strike. Finally, ASU succumbs. 3 riders to that. May call off strike on Friday. Unions neck to meet tomorrow as branches begin voting. It's on page 8. All right. Nigeria's social cohesion index remains weak at 39.6%, as according to API report. It's on page 9. All right. Afenifere knocks Akeredolu, insists on Obi as presidential candidate. It's on page 26. All right. More flood in north central, southeast, according to NIMET and the NISA alert. It's on page 8. Okay. Insurgency. More crisis looms with increased recruitment in northwest and northeast. That's on page 10. Nigeria advocates global collaborations to mitigate refugee crisis. That's on page 9. Yeah, I can see. You know, we have a number of stories here that we could dissect. For instance, that of Dangote and the Kogi state government. I've been interested in that. Although when the thing broke, because I was wondering why the state government as well as Dangote never met on this issue before they got to the level that they are now. I also want to believe that if there are documents, that or the agreements reached before the acquisition of that plant, that Dangote must have followed the due process to get that. I was questioning whether he would have overlooked the necessary things to do before you acquire such a big, a company. That something must have been done legally for him to have taken over the place for years now. Why is it now that Kogi State is realizing that, look, this is ours and not Dangote's?
Well, the issue is a fresh one, and I'm reluctant, in fact, extremely reluctant to make any comment on it because the full facts have not been disclosed. There are claims and counterclaims. The State House of Assembly said that it's taking this action because several invitations sent to the executives of the industry of the cement plant were not honored. Dangote says, well, it acquired the land legally, and so it's you said, I said, that person said. What exactly? Because I recall we had the Commissioner for Information of Kogi State on Good Morning Nigeria. We were discussing flooding, but we took the opportunity of his presence with us on that occasion to raise the issue. So look, what exactly is at stake? Is it land, or is it corporate interest? Because if you say it is land, then of course land is within the purview of the state. But if it is corporate interest, what is the extent of the corporate interest? He said for both of them, both land and then corporate interest. So, but the full facts, as I said, are not out there in the public domain. Perhaps until we get more facts, then I'll be from my own side, I'll be in the position to say, look, this is what I think probably went wrong, or this is probably what ought to have happened. So that's what I think about that. But of course, we know that the National Honors ceremonies took place yesterday, and it was the first such elaborate ceremony by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration since 2015. We do know that there was a special ceremony that was arranged for MKO Abiola and Babagana Kingibe, following, of course, the recognition of June 12 as the new National Democracy Day. Posthumously, MKO Abiola was conferred, of course, with GCFR, and Babagana Kingibe got GCO, and that would have been for a vice president. And yesterday, you also had some awardees who got theirs posthumously. There were about 13 of them who received that. The former Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, and of course, the former Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiru, who died in a plane crash last year. So these are some of the things that, of course, played out. But there were also very interesting developments around the choice of some of the awardees. For instance, a woman, Ms. Josephine Agu, was an airport cleaner who returned $12,200 US dollars found in a toilet at Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos. And then there was also Mohammed Ibrahim. He was a bank security guard who found and returned 10,000 US dollars. So these are some of the things. Then there's the story of Imam Abdullahi Abubakar, a religious leader who was said to have hidden over 260 Christians in his mosque during attacks on Yewa Gindi and Akwadi village in Plateau State. Of course, you had women, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Amina Mohammed, Chimamanda Adichie, and of course other recipients. 447 of them who got the national honors.
Yeah, but it's really a good development, especially for those three that you mentioned. You know, these are people who showed the world that there are good Nigerians, that's good Nigerians, irrespective of the fact that many are hungry. For instance, the cleaner who returned over $12,000. I mean, that could have made her. I mean, if she had taken that away, but she decided to return the money. That's a good development. And in fact, for me, these are the real awardees, if you ask me. You know, because most of them have always been those who are in government, who may have performed creditably. To have received an award. But the most important thing is that this award should be characteristic in nature. You know, I mean, one has to be properly, investigated, if you ask me, to be able to know who and who really deserves honors of this magnitude. But well, whatever it is, Nigerians have been selected for the honors and they've got it. That's interesting. But there are human angle stories here. This issue of flood, Kingsley, which has taken over many parts of Nigeria. Like you just read, that 500 people have lost their lives. And that's not talking about property worth millions, if not billions of naira. You know, and some people are being relocated from the original, abode, to somewhere else. That could be very depressing. You know, when you leave your maternal or your ancestral home to somewhere else, and you never know when you're going to return to your ancestral home. So it's not a good experience for those who have experienced that. They will tell you what life is all about. You know, when it comes to flood, in fact, even in America, in Florida and other parts of America, also had their own share of this flooding, and they're only so devastated because of what it has to do with the, cyclone and what have you, destroying houses, with the flooding. We are even lucky to some extent that we don't have all those kind of cyclones and devastating
hurricanes.
Yeah, exactly, hurricanes.
Everybody saw what happened in 2005 with Katrina that pounded Louisiana and New Orleans. Exactly. So when the levees gave way and bodies were floating on the waters in the United States. In this case, we understand that nearly 90,000 houses have been damaged. And as you very well know, no recourse to insurance, nothing whatsoever. Everybody, you just be on your own.
Who is insured in this country?
That means some of them will have to start from scratch.
I know.
But it's even more hazardous when you see those water levels and the way the houses were submerged. Once the waters begin to recede, the structural integrity of those structures is in question, and
Definitely.
People shouldn't just rush in, to say, look, I want to get back into my house. Otherwise, you start having collapsing structures. Lokoja may now be experiencing some relief, but down the river, Delta, Ndokwa area has already been inundated. Anambra is there. I'm sure Bayelsa now will be waiting, to also take the heat before the waters pour out into the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes, it's not really palatable, people, Nigerians are going through difficulty in those areas that have been flooded, and we hope that something can be done about that, especially to rehabilitate or in fact try to assist those families that have been affected. All right, Kingsley, we round it off on this segment today. Thank you for staying with us up to this moment. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we shall be focusing our attention on what Nigeria intends to do to stop oil theft in the country. Stay with us.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring an impeccable personality with purposeful leadership. Alhaji Muhammad Meitakobi, the Executive National President of Road Transport Employers Association of Nigeria.
In 774 local governments, we'll be able to put all our structures in everywhere. I'll be able to bring the Retians members together to reconcile them to come and work for the progress of the association.
Welcome to a world of fun and excitement as we also present an assemblage of professionals in the media space. Some compelling NTA programs, current trends in the fashion world, ICT, sports, entertainment, and lots more. Get a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Oh, God, John, how old are they? Hey, but what's he come bring all of on a hospital?
Hey, we just come say maybe we collect our second dose of COVID vaccine.
For your pregnant wife?
Madam, women will get belly and women will breastfeed. They front for people we supposed to collect the vaccination because it go protect them and their pikin from to catch the virus. Plus, it is safe well.
That's not the reason why me say if I carry my lovely wife come so that make she forget better protection join. It like say our turn don't reach you. Madam Naija, make you follow who no road.
Try collect the vaccine because it will protect your pikin from COVID-19 plus all your family members and your neighbors sef.
Big toe don't show. But I don't ready for it so.
That Oga Sabi road though. Shey you no go follow who no road.
My name is Dr. Chinonso Egemba. Then they call me Aproko Doctor. The COVID-19 vaccine na ogbonge way to take protect you and your family from wahala, sickness and death from COVID-19. To get your own free COVID-19 vaccine, sharply go any healthcare facility way near you.
Follow who no road.
A. As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Critical military objectives of total defeat of the terrorists in the northeast is already being achieved. Synchronized group and air operations have continued to inflict huge casualties on the terrorists, and they have been forcing many of them, including their commanders and emirs, to surrender in droves with members of their families. Whilst areas where terrorists hitherto had some freedom of actions are being cleared and socio-economic life is gradually returning to the most parts of the northeast, as while internal displaced persons are now returning to their ancestral homes to start life all over in dignity under safe and more secure environment.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As a prompt for our conversation, which is on how to effectively tackle massive crude oil theft in the Niger Delta region, we'll take this background report put together by our correspondent, Joseph Otsen.
An assumed $70 per barrel and a projected 1.69 million barrels per day crude oil production is expected to form part of funding for the 2023 appropriation bill of 20.15 trillion naira presented to the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari. An assumption that looks realistic to economic experts based on current global trends, but perennial economic sabotage of crude oil theft is creating a doubt in the minds of the experts, who fear Nigeria may not be able to meet its target and fend the budget. Few days ago, when the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited met with the Nigerian Senate, he attests to a fact that oil theft has been going on in the country for more than 22 years. He gave a recent account on how the company, in collaboration with security operatives, during a 6-week clampdown on oil theft, found a 4-kilometer pipeline connecting from the Forcados export terminal, illegally exporting about 250,000 barrels of oil per day. He added that operations also led to the deactivation of 395 illegal refineries, destruction of 274 reservoirs, and 1,561 metal tanks, while 49 trucks were seized.
From our major trunk Forcados line into the sea, 4 kilometers into the sea, and with a loading port that has probably operated in the last 9 years, Mr. Chairman. 9 years. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
The latest story is the storming arrest of 8 members of a suspected crude oil syndicate while illegally pumping oil from a Chevron Nigerian Limited pipeline in Delta State into an improvised 87 meters long vessel by operatives of Tantita Security Service Limited, owned by ex-militant leader Dampolo. Officers of NNPC Limited visited the scene and destroyed the vessel as a deterrent to others. These are just few among much of the economic sabotage in the crude oil production industry, which has been the mainstay of the country since the 1970s. Managing Director of the Nigerian Petroleum Company Limited acknowledges the country is losing an alarming 600,000 barrels of oil every day. The sophistication in the oil theft operation and network only brings out more questions than answers. Why is the country struggling to effectively protect its major source of revenue? Are there internal collaborators involving staff of oil companies, security personnel, and members of host communities? To analysts, there is more to what the eyes can see, but guests on Good Morning Nigeria will try to give an insight into the nature of crude oil theft in the country and its implication on the nation's economy.
Thank you, Joseph Olsen, for that background report. Now, joining us for this conversation, we have a number of Zoom connections. From Warri in Delta State, Captain Waredi Eniswo. I hope I got the pronunciation of your name right. Captain Eniswo is a maritime intelligence, aviation and satellite systems consultant for Tantita Security Services Nigeria Limited. Captain Waredi, we're glad to have you on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you so much.
All right, and then we also have joining this conversation via Zoom, Ledom Mite. Is a lawyer, civil rights activist, and former president movement for the survival of the people of Ogoni, MOSOP. Ledom Mite, we're glad to have you on Good Morning Nigeria again after a long while.
Are you increasing volume?
Okay, and from our Lagos studio is Professor Dayo Ayode, Energy and Natural Resources Law Expert, University of Lagos, Bonus Societies, attorneys, and the solicitors. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the program.
Very much.
All right, and via Zoom is Dite Basi George, Director Technical of the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NAITI. Nice to have you with us this morning.
Good morning. Nice having you. Thank you. Being on the show. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, well, our viewers haven't seen the face of Dr. Dite Basi. I'm sure when the question gets to him, we will, of course, have his face on the screen. Okay, that's right. It's right there on the upper left-hand column or side of of the screen. Data Bassi, we're glad to have you with us on the program this morning. Well, gentlemen, in beginning to this program, my colleague Kirian and I bantered just about how troubling, worrisome, if not dispiriting, the issue of the massive crude oil theft in the Niger Delta is. And of course, in recent days, the social media has been awash with all kinds of visuals coming out of the Niger Delta about the activities of these oil thieves. What is the scale of the challenge that the country is facing here? Let's begin with Captain Waredi. Captain Waredi, as you said, is an intelligence consultant for Tantita Security Services. Captain Waredi, what is the scale of challenge that the country is dealing with in terms of the crude oil thieves?
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure being here to explain quite a lot of the issues happening out there. The problem is very big, is indescribable.
There's a phone. I tried to use someone's phone. Yeah.
The challenges are enormous as we speak.
I'll let them forget because of my wahala since 6:30.
Is it possible that
Captain Waredi, it looks like you probably have some other persons in the room there with you. Could you just tell them to be mute while you are speaking, because there's a filtration of their sounds into your microphone. Just advise them to be mute while you are on air. Captain Waredi.
The noisy background is not coming from here. I'm here alone. It's coming probably from other areas, maybe even in the studio.
Myself, my colleague and I are quiet here, but regardless, proceed.
Okay, then could you just advise others to mute their mics? Those not speaking should mute their mics.
Okay, so advisedly then, this is almost like a webinar. All others who are on Zoom for this interaction, just be muted while another guest is on. Captain Waredi.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, can you take your question again?
My question is, what is the scale of the challenge that the country is confronted with in terms of crude oil theft in the Niger Delta?
Well, the challenge is enormous. It's got possibly 2 to 3 dimensions to it. There is the local dimension. There is also the international dimension to this. The local dimension is on a much smaller scale than the international dimension. Now, I'll explain the local dimensions to you first. Now, what you have is quite a bunch of people who go in happy to pipelines here and there, and they divert the oil into storages, illegal storages, where sometimes they refine this oil. They fractionally distillize it to form kerosene, diesel, and a whole lot of other products, and then possibly even truck them to other states or even truck them internationally. That's the lower dimension to this. Now, the higher dimension is where you have the sophisticated side of it, where our major trunk lines are being tapped and possibly even diverted to oil wells that are not in use, where ships of low draft do come, take as much as they want, and walk away, come back when they want. So that's the international dimension to this. And notably, we've tracked quite a lot of these movements in the past. That was where we developed a database of intelligence over them. Now, as you well know, it is not easy to go and apprehend such people, especially the international dimension ones, because there are a whole lot of countries who are happy with this trade in the sense that it comes into their countries cheap, it helps their economy, while it kills our economy. So that is the summary of it at the moment.
All right, we will definitely come back to you for further explanations, because there are dimensions to that which you've just mentioned. We will be able to dissect aspects of it to have better understanding of what the situation is like in Niger Delta. But now let's bring in Lidum Anazo Mite, lawyer, civil rights activist, and former president of Movement for Survival of the People of Ogoni. Now, Niger Delta is quite huge, and we understand that this oil theft take place at different parts of Niger Delta. From where you're coming from, let us know what the the gravity of this menace is in terms of oil theft. Can we get your view of the dimension of this oil theft in your part of Niger Delta?
Well, let me say, I want to join the captain to say that there are several forms in which oil theft exhibit itself. But I think that most times there's so much over-focus on these boys who are doing what we call the illegal refining of crude oil. In my view, it does exist in a large scale, but when you are talking of the quantity of oil theft, I think focusing on those aspects of it diverts our attention from the huge ones, where ships, as the captain has explained, people use barges to transport crude to the high seas. So who are these people? They are not these young boys in the Niger Delta. There are people who have connection with international buyers of this crude oil. There are those who can have the influence that will make the security agencies look the other way while they do what they are doing. In fact, to be complicit in what they are doing. That is the dimension of oil theft that takes a lot from us. Why is it that we do not know such people? It is not just these small areas that we focus on. And then there is also the dimension of oil theft, where the quantity that is actually being sold legally is either understated or is not quite reflected. So there are three forms of what is going on. My view is that the bulk of oil theft are those perpetrated by those, not the small boys, but the big guys up there. And once we tackle that, then we are now actually trying to solve the problem. I have been, when I was chairman of 90, I was sitting on the National Economic Council Committee on Oil Theft and Pipeline Vandalization. And I chaired the subcommittee on that was interfacing with the communities. And we confronted and met most of the young boys who are there. We met with security agencies who told us clearly how many of these ships, the mother ships, sit in the high oceans and they are being fed. And there is no way any country in the world that these sort of ships will enter their territorial waters that security agencies will not know. So let people not pretend. I think that's where the problem is. I mean, all these boys with 50 liters jerry can or 100, I'm not saying they are not there, so much. And even that, there's nothing that, I mean, these things are not in segments. So even those people can also supply to the big guys who are selling this thing. But why is it that we have not been able to apprehend these things? Ships escape in Nigeria, and then we go and cry over that we do not know what is happening. I think that the only people who are victims of all this are the communities. Because whether it is by the young people or by the big guys, it involves devastation of their environment. And the complicity between the security agencies and those involved is far more than any person can say. Sometime in the past, the governor of Rivers State physically had to go to chase all these sites of illegal bunkering. And clearly, identified some security agencies who even hold what they call points, and nothing has happened. So let us be focused if we want to deal with these issues. And you talked also about NMPC, whether it's limited or it's not limited. But what I see is that I hear that they have not put money in the federation account, but the other day they were declaring profits. What is that? Whose oil is that they are doing profit for when no money is going to where all of us share? So I think that we have not decided as a country to focus on this. As I said, when I was also in NITE, we made reports upon reports that this is a country that do not have valves at all our, at least the flow stations. So we hardly know how much we actually produce from each well. And there are excuses every time they are bringing why we are not going to put valves. Why can't we, like other countries are doing?
Ledon Mite, thank you very much there for your opening statement. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. And just as well, we're bringing out Dr. Dita Bassi, who is Director of Technical at NTA. Dr. Dita Bassi, just as Ledon Mite was saying while he was chairman of the National Stakeholder Working Group, which is the board of NTA, NTA has since then, I'm talking about Dr. Dita Bassi, who is joining us via Zoom. On the screen there, you are seeing Professor Ayoade, but my question is going first to Dita Bassi before we bring in Professor Ayoade. Dr. Dita Bassi, as recently as only a couple of years ago, we had the latest reports from NTA with regard to crude oil theft, and there was even a committee of governors under the auspices of the Nigerian Governors Forum. What is it that NTA itself has found as to the, if you like, the push factors for the massive crude oil theft and why we appear unable to deal with the challenge?
Good morning, Austin. Thank you very much for that question. It's a pleasure to speak after my boss, the former chair, that's Professor Dr. Ledu Mite. Like he rightly said, NTA conducts audits, which we has reported severally on the issue of oil theft. Let me reference the last report that we had, that's the 2020 oil and gas report, which we also got data from companies on what is their total crude loss and theft. It will interest you to know that during the audit process, we had a interaction with some companies. 22 companies provided information to us on oil theft, crude losses, true theft, and sabotage, which we had amounting to 39.16 million barrels for 2022 alone. When we converted that, translating that into monetary terms, as of 2020 alone, based on our report, the actual loss, based on only 22 companies that had reported, was about $1.63 billion, using the average price for the Federation equity of $41.65 per barrel in 2020. This, for 22 companies alone, 22 companies represented 15.1% of total physicalized production of the 22 companies. This is 6.1% of total physicalized production for the year. So you can see that just for 22 companies, these are very huge numbers that we've got from them. This is quite alarming because even for that year, the data was low because production was a bit lower for that year. We've had in each, like the previous speaker that said, the issue of crude theft, it's very, very huge. It's a drain to the economy, to the production, to the economy. And we always ask this question: this crude that's been stolen, they must have a market somewhere. It has an international dimension in the sense that when you take this crude, you sell it somewhere. And Nigeria's crude, each crude has a unique signature. You will know from where these crudes are coming from. We have different blends in Nigeria, the Bonny Light and so. But if you don't have a market for crude, it won't be stolen. So we have to also look at the market where this crude are also going. And like I said, these are huge numbers. The revelations that we've been getting from from NNPC that trunk lines have been punctured and everything. Yes, we have this data on these crude losses. They are quite huge. But I think it has to be a collaborative measure between the government and the security agencies and the communities. Nigeria is bleeding from crude losses. I think we need to have a way to curb all of these things. This is the result we have from our findings. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you also for your opening remarks. And he has already given us some points here to say that in 2020, 22 companies, made a report, to NTA on what is happening. Because these are companies that are directly involved in the legal, operations in the area. And he talked about 39.16 barrels of million barrels lost and $1.63 billion lost. This is humongous loss, if under normal circumstance. Okay, we'll continue along that line of thought, in the course of the program. But presently, let's bring in Professor Dayo Ayoade. Prof, you've listened to other guests, and of course, we have learned that there are dimensions to that. And from the last speaker, it's obvious that what is happening can only be dealt with, if the country, comes up with the measures that it has come up presently. Now we know how huge this theft is. We also know that it has international and local dimensions. And I have a privilege, of meeting some of these young men in the Niger Delta who are involved in the local refining and all of that. There was a conference for them in Abuja some time ago. And I accosted one of them, who said, look, sir, that they may not have the capacity to really, steal oil. But what they do is that they have links with some legal companies who are operators and who supply them with some crude oil, which they now refine into diesel, more especially diesel and what have you. So there is a kind of interconnectivity among either the legal operators and, of course, the illegal ones. Let us share your view on what the situation is like and apparently what can be done to checkmate that.
Thank you very much for having me. Of course, we know that crude oil theft is not actually new. For decades now, oil has been stolen. It's just that it's going at such an unprecedented rate that it's now a big threat to national security. Is a threat to our country? Is a threat to the image of our country? Nigeria is no longer the largest African producer. Angola has overtaken us thanks to oil theft. So we have a big problem. We have a massive crisis. I listened to a lot of our experts, speakers before me there, and I can tell you that the problem, which nobody wants to really address, is that we don't actually know the actual scale of the problem. We have guesstimates. We have guesswork. We imagine this is what's happening, but we don't actually know. We have reports saying we are losing 600,000 barrels per day. We have reports saying we are losing 400,000 barrels a day. We don't actually know, do we? We don't have metering at our wellheads. We don't know what the actual production is at the wellhead. So we don't know what the actual loss is. We do not know whether most of the oil is being taken from pipelines. We don't know whether it's been stolen from our export terminals. We don't even know whether it's through illegal ship-to-ship transfers. So there's a big problem. There's an opacity, there's a confusion, and because there's confusion and there's no real knowledge of what's going on, it's difficult for us to sit down and find proper solutions. And the reason is because there seems to be, unfortunately, not much of a political will to tackle this problem. And the problem is now eating the country's economy, to threaten the budget, to threaten every aspect of the economy. And that's where that's where we are today. I'm glad that now it's on the news reports and everybody's talking about crude oil theft. But what will happen next week? Are we going to be talking about crude oil theft or some other scandal will have taken our minds off this? How do we get to where we're supposed to get to? You mentioned there something about potential solutions. I think, of course, other people will also talk about this. There may be a need for a judicial inquiry as to what's going on. Because if you don't know the scale of a problem, how do you truly tackle it? The time has come, I think, for Nigerians to decide whether we want to bleed to death or we want to stop the flow. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Ayode, for the points that you have raised. You made a suggestion now about the judicial inquiry. Useful point. We hope we have the opportunity of interrogating that and to find out the utility of a judicial inquiry. Some persons will tell you we have tons of reports lying on the shelves, but you mentioned, and one of the other guests also said something about the political will to do the right thing. Which one? I'm going back to Captain Waredi. Captain Waredi still with us via Zoom. Captain Waredi, for the benefit of just the lay person, how do we understand that you have so-called illegal pipelines traveling several kilometers into the high sea? And by the way, a pipeline is usually made of galvanized steel. These are not bamboo sticks that you cut from somewhere, they just link them up and it goes into the high sea. And so it would take time to lay those pipelines. It would take time for you to, of course, excavate and then cover up those pipelines. It would take a while for the pipelines to be operating. All of this in plain sight, and nobody sees anything, nobody hears anything, and nobody reports anything. And it's been going on for years. It's difficult to understand, but help us understand it.
Thank you very much. It's a bit difficult to fathom, if you ask me, and I believe it's also stemming from the fact that there is so much reliance on government to do everything for the citizens. But that is not correct. The citizens also have to take ownership of the problem. They also have to understand that this is the country we have, and anything they know that can help the government address their issues is very, very important. So having said that, I will say that what you are seeing, and the constructions you see that are coming up now, we're not done today. It's an international ring, in addition to local support as well, because tapping into a pipeline is not small business, especially a pipeline that the operators claim to be flying over. It's not a 1 week, it's not a 2 week issue. So obviously there is some form of, complicity in the environment. But it is not easy to also deal with these issues. How well are the communities educated that if you see so and such, they should inform the public or inform a certain arm of government? We must also seize this opportunity to thank the NNPC that they took such initiative to come and sort out these issues, including our military that is working so hard day and night, some sleeping in the bushes, to detect all these things with us and give us support to address these issues, especially the Operation Delta Safe and the JTF. They've worked very hard on this with us. And I will go with the line of the previous speaker who said political will. That is true. If you don't have political will or support or some form of authorization, you're not going to be able to do this. But fortunately, it is coming now, and we're very happy. And we only wish this administration is going to continue to the next, and then, the next will take over from wherever they stop. I mean, it's a very good work. So the international ring, the local ring combined to do this job, it's a very sophisticated, partnership. If you were there when we rooted out a lot of these things, you would have seen the ingenuity with which they passed the pipes to even increase the pressure they get when the line is flowing. So it is not something that is done by a villager. That's not correct. It is obviously something that is done by very well trained or some bunch of very well trained engineers. And let alone, as you said, to bury this pipe deep into the ground and then connect it into the ocean, where ships come in and suck like orange juice, if you ask me. is even the second most surprising thing. But as I said, we have a lot of work to do locally, in the sense that we have to reorient our citizens. There should be some form of national orientation to report anything they see not comfortable within their area. But we must also take this far and wide. Quite a lot of the reason why the citizens, maybe the locals here and about, do not even want to say or don't want to talk about. I'll tell you one dimension of it again. You'll find some wellheads that are not in use, and the locals are allowed to go and pressurize these wellheads that are not in use and bring oil out of them. And in that way, they also become part of the suppliers, as the previous speaker said. So you see, if a wellhead is not in use, why not completely decommission it? So there must be a reason why these wellheads that are not in use are left, because some of these underground pipelines connect to those wellheads where others find it easy to take from. So I will leave it there for now until you come back again. Thank you.
Okay, you leave it there for now with very good points that you have made, considering the operational methodology of those involved. They are highly, equipped persons. They have the know-how, and as you rightly put it, the ingenuity, to do the construction, of whatever line that they have to tap into and get the oil siphoned. And as I was talking about the young men who are involved in this local refining, they made it clear to us also that sometimes they feed some ships in the high sea, and the question is, how did these ships get into Nigerian territorial waters? Who are those responsible for monitoring the nation's territorial waters to know when a ship had just leaped into the creeks, for this bad business? And so, another Meti, thank you once again. Now let's bring in Dete Bassi George, director, or rather, we should go to the former president of the Movement for Survival of the People of Ogoni, and that's Anazo Miti, once more. With this understanding, that professionals are involved in this, there's also the belief that there are complicities, in terms of the involvement of security agencies in all of this. And having known this over the years, why is it so difficult, for us to begin to fish out those elements, who are involved in this, or who are encouraging it and in fact facilitating it, because of what they benefit from it? Why has it been so difficult, for us to fish out these elements among us in the security apparatus of the country who are responsible for monitoring entrances into our territorial waters?
Well, let me first, I was almost smiling when I heard the submission of Captain. First, when we talk about locals, maybe we are looking at some old fishermen or fishermen who are just in loincloth going to farm or to fish. Mind you that there are several people, young people, who were engaged in oil, by the oil companies or the oil servicing companies, trained to in pipeline welding, in all these sort of things. Many of whom have, if you like, have been sacked from their jobs. They exist in the villages. So don't take this away from the capacities of those who can do it. I'll give you a story. As I said, I was a chairman of the subcommittee of the National Economic Council on this matter. That's several years ago. Now, we went to one of the locations and engaged the young men. One of them took up
well, again, it looks like your load bandwidth is affected, your connection to us. If the engineers and our director tell us that it's okay, we'll come back to you. Is it all right, or still all right? So Ledon, please, we can't hear you, so we'll come back to you later. Okay, Lidom, I understand you are back. You're back on. Sorry, we lost you at the point where you were trying to explain your visit to one of the locations where one of the young men was trying to say something. Exactly what that's what you were getting into. All right, it looks like there's a freeze one more time on this Zoom connection to us. I would like to go back to our Lagos Network Center. Professor Dayo Ayade, there's an issue here that I would like us to also examine. I find it a bit curious. Yes, Captain Waredi and indeed others have said, oh, NNPC has opened our eyes to what's going on. But we know that the NNPC over the years, at least since 1977, had become increasingly specialized in its various arms, even of course with the PIA in existence. The refineries are corporate entities on their own. But there is a critical arm of the NNPC, which is PPMC, Pipelines and Products Marketing Company. And of course, you do, well, anyone who is interested in oil and gas will see from time to time where notices are by law advertised with regard to pipelines. And then you ask yourself, if there is a PPMC and these pipelines are being vandalized, these pipelines are being breached, these pipelines are being tapped into for crude oil theft, what is it that the PPMC had been doing all along?
That's an excellent question. I think that sums up the whole problem we have with crude oil theft in Nigeria. We have government agencies that are there funded by a taxpayer to do a certain job. They're there to survey, do surveillance on pipelines, to know what's going on with the pipelines, and they seem not to know. First, we have to admit that there are thousands of kilometers of pipelines in sometimes rather in swampy areas and shallow waters, sometimes not very hospitable places. But you know, we'd expect NNPC's subsidiaries, like PPMC, we'd expect the government agencies such as the Navy and so forth, and the security agencies. We will have a maritime police to know what's going on in these areas, because this is the lifeblood of the Nigerian economy. So unfortunately, it seems that some of our institutions have dropped the ball. I mean, we're in an era where pipelines have sensors, you have data streaming online, you can computerize all these things and know exactly where the oil flows are and what's going on. For many years, we have not invested in these technologies. We have not invested properly, maybe, in surveillance. And then there's the whole issue of perhaps some people are involved in illegal crude oil theft. Do they have partners, maybe, in our institutions? These are some of the allegations that are coming out, but we don't actually know. But something is obviously very wrong if a ship can wander into our waters, into our territorial waters, pick up crude oil and sail away, and nobody says anything, and nobody can stop them, and nobody knows what's going on. We don't even know exactly how much of that crude has been taken away. So I think you have a good point there that perhaps institutional failure is where we have to start. Right now, we said there's a pipeline that's been discovered for good 9 years, an illegal pipeline. Is that really possible? Is there nobody working in that area of the country? And are you telling me that this is the first time we're discovering a pipeline to magically come out of to come into existence? It's obviously problematic. You can't expect Nigerian public to believe this type of stories. Clearly, somebody knew it was there. They turned a blind eye to it, or they were complicit in it. And for reasons now that the matter's blown up higher, we're being given this one. Are there other pipelines? I suggest there may be.
Okay, there may be, and of course, the man who is now the lead in the process of stopping this menace, Tompolo, has already successfully got this one, and I'm sure he's also going further deep into the Niger Delta to get more. One of his men, we learned from the social media, did not accept a 25 million naira bribe given to him not to reveal the operations of the illegal operators. And of course, that has yielded dividend. From what you said, perhaps if this push continues as it is, then we're going to get some more results. Let's return to Lidom Miti once more. So we lost your contact a short while ago, but we learned that you are back. You were telling us a story about a time you visited one of the enclaves of these young men and what they told you. Please, you can go ahead.
Well, I told you it's not. Hello?
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly we can.
Hello?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we are. We are. You are on.
Hello?
Yes, you are on. You are on. You can go on.
Hello?
All right.
Stuff happens.
He's not sure that we can hear him.
Well, if we can take his audio without the visuals, I'm sure our engineers will sort that out. You can reach him via phone, and then let's listen to Lidom Bite. Of course, he has a lot to tell us with respect to this menace that we're dealing with. Back to Dieter Bassi, Dr. Dieter Bassi of NTA, Director Technical of NTA. I know that, of course, NTA has its annual reports, and the issue of crude oil theft is also there. I think it was sometime in 2019 or thereabout, Governor Obaseki, who was the chair of one of the committees of governors to investigate and report back on crude oil theft, did present a report at a NTA event at Transcorp here in Abuja. And then you have all your numbers coming up from time to time. What is it that NTA finds in dealing with the recommendations on stemming crude oil theft in the country?
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley, for that. Let me just start from, let me make some clarification before I answer your question. There was a question asked about PPMC in terms of the trunking of the crude from crude, what PPMC does. I think we need to look at it in two dimensions. There's the crude, for crude, it passes through the trunks, the pipes that are being maintained by JV operators. Sometimes Nigeria is in joint venture with some companies, and these are the ones that the multinationals operate on behalf of the country. So much of the punctured line that you see is along those crude pipe corridors that you have, which is jointly owned by Nigeria through NNPC in terms of the equity stake in the ventures. While the inland ones are the ones that has white product in terms of products from the refineries to depots, which also has been, vandalization is ongoing, but most of those pipes have also not enough to functional. That's why you see a lot of bridging trucks going on up and down. The major issues we're having with the export crude terminal ones are the ones that are within the coastal areas of Nigeria, whereby they puncture them and then they loop it up to the ocean and then it's being siphoned, like the captain has said earlier on. These are the ones that we have major issues with in terms of our crude losses, in terms of the ones that has direct impact on our revenue. While the other ones are products that have been siphoned, that's refined products that people scoop it, that's from that Class Cove and all of the other ones. So for those ones, NNPC is solely responsible for those ones. And I think they've been trying to see how those pipes are maintained. But the pipes are aged and they're aging. Most of our pipes are very, very old, and we need to maintain.
Dr. Bassi, I would like you to clarify this on the issue of pipelines. Professor Ayade already made his comment on that when I asked the question. Are you saying that even as a JV operation, the Nigerian partner in the joint venture is a sleeping partner, that it has no oversight whatsoever on what its other partners would be doing with regard to the trunking pipelines for transportation of crude oil to the oil terminals? Does the PPMC not have any role? Is PPMC solely concerned, for instance, with refined petroleum products?
Okay. Our JV asset is being managed by NAPIMS in terms of the true NAPIMS. That's the one, the NNPC subsidiary that manages those assets. So those ones are the operator manages those pipelines. While yes, oversight of these pipelines is supposed to be handled by the DPR, the fund DPR, which is now the commission, the Nigerian Upstream and Regulatory Commission. They're the ones that are supposed to supervise this one, the flow station, that we find out that to ensure that these pipelines are not punctured and are optimally produced, and then the issue of losses are also accounted for. They are the major ones that are, they are the regulatory arm of that government in terms of these pipelines. So we need to empower them. Thank God, the good thing is that PIA has empowered them now to do more of their regulatory function, oversight function on those pipelines, and then also on that operations. We also need to make sure that there has a collaborative efforts with the security agencies that are attached to these areas. We know that the Navy and the Army are there to look at that trunk line. So collectively, that's what I'm trying to say, is that the regulatory agencies are supposed to work in tandem with the security agencies to ensure that these pipelines are not ruptured when they're supposed, and then they are fully protected, and our investment through the NNPC and NAPIMS is also protected in these areas. So I think it's a collective thing that we need to do. We've reported on crude losses, like I said, for a long time. And one of the key things that we found out is that there needs to be more collaboration between the various government agencies in terms of crude losses. We need to synergy. A ship cannot come and break into Nigerian territorial waters without it being noticed. We've been to some places whereby you see that for every vessel that comes into this country, there are indicators that you know that this vessel is in this country, and these vessels came in with a particular load and is going out with a particular load. You will know that this vessel has been uploaded with certain goods. Because of the buoyancy, you will know that the vessel is loaded. So how can we collaborate more for us to have this synergy between the security agencies and the regulatory agencies in this sector, and even the host communities, to know that this is our collective wealth? What NTA has been encompassing is that we need to, as a country, have a direct policy that will be able to look at synergizing these agencies together for effective monitoring. The issue of metering, do we actually know what we're producing? You pump from the flow station and what goes to the other side, the export point. Somebody punctures it, you will know. Because what you pump from there, if there's adequate metering facility, you will be able to know that your product has been lost. And if even the pressure will drop from where you're exporting from when your lines have been punctured. And I think, like we've all been saying here, if we have the political will to stop all these things, which we've seen has been manifested with the discovery of the pipeline that NNPC have just, of recent, we've just seen huge pipelines that have discovered, and then public statements have been made where everybody's asking, how can this exist for 9 years or so without people not knowing about all of these things? But along the line, these are pipelines that pass through communities, and I think people know about these things. But is there incentive for them to report on these issues? So I think we should be able to have that this oil well is a collective wealth for this country, and we should be able to see how we can harness it. With the PIA now, with the host community bill component of it, if this host community could have sense of belonging that this product, this crude is working for them. They will be able to protect it more, because so when they puncture these things, it's a huge disaster for them in the host communities, because some of these trunk lines, before you even weld it, it must also have it will rupture, it will spill some crude oil, and then it will affect the communities. And most of these ones require professionals to weld it, because it's high pressure pipes. A layman cannot do that. You must be properly trained to understand this thing. So who are these people trained to do this aspect? There are people that are within the industry or have industry experiences. So these are things that we need to look at holistically. And then for us, I think we need also have a step further to ask, who are these people that buy this product? Because if we don't have buyers for this product internationally, the market will dry up. It will be a disincentive for them to even once you steal crude and you don't have a buyer for it, it becomes a liability for you, and you have to stop it because it's not lucrative anymore. But as long as you have buyers, people willing to buy your product, I think it will not discourage people from doing that. So I think we also need to look at the international aspect of it, how people from the international communities buy this stolen crude from Nigeria. And also,
Judge, we're going to come back to you in the course of the program. I think you have made your point, very valid points that you have made. I also want to push on with what some Nigerians are saying, Kinsley, and that the nation is yet to muster the capacity to take over completely oil exploration in the country. These collaboration or partnership or whatever with foreign multinationals is also part of this problem. We were talking about international dimension to that. How do we know whether those who are also partnering with us do not have other people from different parts of the world that are also patronizing this oil thread? Because it's a plan, it's a network, and a network of highly placed professionals in that business that do this. And when you talk about PPMC, nappings, responsibility of agencies and what have you, who have come a long way, and we can't be talking about collaboration among agencies now. We're past that level, because of course there's no agency that can operate in isolation. There has to be a linkage between one agency and the other for the work to be done. And if there's no synergy, as he was pointing out, then of course nothing is going to work. If PPMC is operating at this level, at a different level, and nappings at the other level, yet they have reasons to have common challenge in the operations of what they are doing, then of course it's not going to work. That's part of what the issues are, and that's why these thieves are making progress in Niger Delta, stealing our oil with impunity. All right, we'll take a short break now. When we come back, the conversation will continue. This is Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. Do stay with us.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all. To look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections alone. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
The security situation in Nigeria has been reasonably stable in spite of activities of unpatriotic elements engaged in various criminal activities around the country. Daily situation reports coming in from states. 2 months ago, it has shown relative peace on many of our highways, such as Abuja, Kaduna Birnin Gwari, Sokoto, Zamfara, Kaduna.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have our three guests with us, Professor Ayade in our Lagos Network Studios, Data Basi of Native, with us via Zoom, Captain Waredi, also still with us via Zoom from Warri. Captain Waredi, I want to come back to you, and this is something that I'm sure ordinary Nigerians who are minded to interrogate this issue will also be concerned about, and it's as follows. We have a regular guest on security issues on Good Morning Nigeria. His name is Dr. Kabir Adamu. And he says from time to time that there are some 25 odd agencies that have their mandate areas around intelligence and security. And I'm wondering, with regard to the massive crude oil theft in the Niger Delta, why does it appear that the security agencies have not been on top of their game? I say appear because if they do have their reports are not intended to be publicized. But you will just ask yourself, Defense Intelligence Agency, where have they been? Naval Intelligence, where have they been? We talk about the international dimension to the stealing of our crude. Where is the National Intelligence Agency, which deals with the external environment? Where is DSS? And where are the others? Is it that they were not getting this cooperation and support of the locals, or they were operating, or they have been operating in silos? What more can be done to ensure that these agencies get on top of their game, and that relevant or requisite action is then taken to stem the tide of crude oil theft in the Niger Delta? Captain Waredi.
Thank you very much, and it's a very good observation. Now, there's no doubt that you have all these agencies with high-level intelligence, capacity, and equipment. Nigeria has never been short of that. Now, what we have been short of is processing the intelligence. As you know, every agency or organization comes with its own bureaucracy. Criminals have no bureaucracy. They act, and it's very swift. So if I am in an agency where I have some form of information and I want to act on the information, I probably have to take permission from a different hierarchy or level to be able to execute that particular intelligence, process it, and effect things properly. In that process, you could have what is called intelligence leakage. And that leakage may not be very easy to manage. Now, one very big missing link in all of these intelligence we have is the private sector. In my experience, I've worked with quite a fair bit of private sector organizations and governments around the world. Nigeria is one of them, and it's a great place because there are a lot of opportunities when it comes to these kind of issues. Now, the Nigerian sector is just in its early days of appreciating the efficacy of the private sector when it comes to issues like this. Israel is very good at it, and that is why it is very difficult to impregnate their security system. It's because of the private sector. And one of the best private sectors I've consulted for is Tantita. We process intelligence very fast. They have long and short lines of communications that are very, very effective. So if we have the government that is also very high and mighty in its powers, make no mistakes. I mean, people may understand or have this perception that Nigeria is not serious. That is not correct. 3 days ago was the answer to those who thought that way. So, and why did that come up? It was a strong partnership between the government and the private sector. So once that trust is built between the government systems and the private sector, sure, we'll be able to overcome these problems. Because as I said in the past, bureaucracy is one of the issues that criminals exploit. They know that. Possibly, as previous speaker rightly said, there are a lot of people who worked in these places before that leave with high amount of knowledge to go do damage later on. I mean, I am a jet pilot, and after 9/11, I'm not allowed to renew my license unless I'm attached to an airline. It's one of the security measures taken against me. So how well are these experts who leave these various providers being monitored and their activities known, or they don't become consultants against their employers? So it's something we need to also visit. But as I said, the country is in a new dawn, and we are happy that they've taken this type of step. And we have to build on this step because we have shown that a good and intelligent private sector organization like Tantita will be able to work very well with the government in processing intelligence and even sharing the one they have. That is actually the situation at the moment. Now, coming into the international scene, I would like to educate the citizens about something. Tantita has got a lot of information on how these ships do move. One place, notably, which is a very big threat to the Nigeria's hydrocarbon economy, is the port of Tema in Ghana. Let us not hide anything or make mistakes about it. Most of these vessels, that is where they go to. They discharge in the port of Tema. And Tema has got Ghana's largest oil refinery. So is it coincidental that these ships go there? So it is something we need to take up with the Ghanaian government, because we can't continue to suffer our own citizens so others can survive. No, we will not sit back. So let's address those issues. I'll stop here again for now.
You're stopping with a very key point, you know.
Absolutely,
I mean,
but a key point on which, you know, we can also continue the
exactly,
conversation.
exactly, because these ships get somewhere, they're bet somewhere, discharge somewhere, return to Nigerian waters.
This one is just nearby, that
they're
just mentioned.
nearby.
Yeah.
Of course, yes. And having said that, of course, I'm sure government must have even known that before now, that some Ghanaian...
Well, let us assume that government didn't know. Based on insider, in terms of security, who's now saying that, look, this is the reality that we have to deal with.
And
yes.
one of the points that he made that is very germane is the fact that the private sector is now getting involved in security. Because, you know, as he talked about Israel, if you want to do anything in Israel, for instance, on security basis, definitely you're going to hire, you know, the private sector. They are more equipped, right? They have fewer personnel, but more intelligent. They have the technology, you know, to deploy in terms of investigation.
And the U.S. also does that. I mean, you have military contractors,
exactly.
Blackwater, and so on and so forth.
As he said, we're waking up. You know, this is our morning with respect to that, because insecurity has been the bane of our development to some level, and something has to be done.
But Kieran, I'm sorry to jump in here. Captain Waradi also said something very useful. I don't know whether you and I were on set when we were discussing how to deal with banditry, kidnapping, and terrorism. If you recall, our military guests, ex-military guests, talked about security debarment allowance, because there were instances of ex-service personnel who had been caught as either suppliers to terrorists or had been participants in banditry themselves. So the security debarment allowance is an allowance which the federal government pays to ex-service personnel to ensure that they don't get into those kind of activities. In a sense, I remember I mentioned that, like in law, it's an equivalent of restraint of trade, you know, and so on and so forth. He now is saying, look, if you have persons who have been trained in these activities, pipeline welding and so on and so forth, and they are now out of work or out of service, how do you keep a tab on them?
And again, people that may have been sacked, you know, that are angry, that are not happy and all of that, and they will now deploy their ingenuity in doing such thing, you know, and making it work. And that's one thing, when I went to Urobo area in Niger Delta, honestly, I saw pipelines, the ones that, you know, use from pipeline, and you see, you know, families living around that pipeline. I was saying, okay, if there's a bust or something, how will these people live in this vicinity survive?
That's how Mossop, you know, Golden Land came up.
You know, so I saw these pipelines in villages, and you see houses around them, not even up to a kilometer away from them. You could just do maybe a few meters, you know, from a home to a pipeline. And I was wondering how these people are surviving in the area. Okay, now let's bring in Professor Dayo Ayode once more. I know you're not a security expert, you know, but at least you were a lawyer. How do we go about this? You have listened to Waredi, you know, and of course his revelation is very apt. How do we begin to, you know, handle the situation as it is now? Already, Tompolo and his group are in Niger Delta, and their primary assignment is to try and locate the areas where our fuel or our oil is being siphoned. That is one. Two, do you think that there should be other measures, especially as we have just learned that those ships that come still into Nigeria and you know, take our oil, berth in Ghana and discharge, and of course return to Nigeria? How do you think Nigerian government should take this up with Ghanaian government, and in fact any other government within this sub-Saharan Africa where this illicit business is progressing?
Kirian, Professor Ayade, just to add to what Kirian just said, the same question. How should the Nigerian state internationalize the ill effects of the market for stolen crude, of which we are, of course, a major victim?
That's very interesting, because the Nigerian government knows what to do. I have no issues where the Nigerian government employs private contractors. Private contractors can be more efficient, they're much more lean, they don't have bureaucracy to contend with, and they can, if you give them a specific target, they can get back to you. But you also have to be careful that your institutions that are interfacing with these private contractors are not being subsumed So you don't have a situation where the tail is wagging the dog, because our institutions must always be protected. Our institutions must be allowed to do their work. If the funding that should go to the Navy, that should go to the various security agencies that are watching over us, are diverted in any way to private pockets, there will be an impact ultimately. I think we should focus on reforming our institutions to make them much more efficient, to make sure they can get their job done in collaboration with also working with the private contractors. As to the international dimension, I read something recently where I think the GMD of NNPC talked about asking the international community to consider oil thefts to be similar to blood diamonds. This is not even new. We have been even talking about this. I believe when Tony Blair was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, there was talk then about how we can look at stolen crude as blood diamonds, meaning that if something is a resource, a natural resource is stolen, there should be no market for it. It's blood money. It's destructive money. The oil that we have has a print. It has a DNA, if you like. Bonny Light or whatever blend you want to talk about is well known internationally as Nigeria's crude. You don't get it anywhere else. Now, what's the need for the international community? Is the international community going to come and save us when we know what to do? Our security expert there mentioned the country, and that a lot of our crude oil has been diverted there. I think it's well known to some extent, I'm not in the security forces, it's known to some extent that some of the refineries in West Africa are picking up our cargoes. I'll be shocked if our intelligence agencies don't know this. What they're doing about it or what they're about to do about it, I don't know. So I think we have to be careful here. The institutions must do their work. As Nigerians, we insist that our institutions carry out the tasks for which constitutionally and for which we pay their salaries, for them to carry out the job for which they're there for. At the same time, we also utilize our private contractors to do specific tasks. Where we should be careful is when private individuals become governments effectively. And we may get to that stage where vast amount of money disappear into consulting fees. Some of them, for not much work done. So as I said, I expect some more revelations, but I'm not interested in the revelations so much as what the Nigerian state actually does about the revelations. And that's why when I said a judicial commission, I'm very, very well aware of so many years of documentation that's thrown in the bin. Let me make a quick analogy with the downstream sector. You may remember a few years ago when this issue of subsidy kept up, just something as what we are experiencing today. And I think the House of Representatives did a report on it, and they told us that the ships that came to Nigeria did not actually pick up the oil, because some of the ships that we said we found in Nigeria to pick up to deliver our white products were not even in Nigeria those days. They were said to have been here. Thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, Professor Ayode, thank you. I get the point. I think it's an issue, it's a recommendation to be looked into, whether it's parliamentary inquiry or, which of course is legitimate, or the judicial inquiry. That's something else. But it usually, of course, everybody makes reference to the Oputa panel and the decision of the Supreme Court that the tribunals of inquiry are usually state matters and not national matters. But I think we can find a way around it to get to understand just what went wrong, who dropped the ball, and how to stem the tide. I was just wondering, in terms also of internationalizing the theft of our crude oil and therefore disrupting the market for stolen crude. Dr. Data Basi, Nigeria subscribes to the EITI principles. Has Nigeria ever raised this issue with the EITI so that it now becomes a matter, because you have a number of countries that subscribe to it? If, as it is indicated now, the Tema port in Ghana is one of the receivers of our stolen crude, there is nowhere in the world, let's be realistic. I know that criminal law is territorial. There's nowhere in the world where receipt of stolen property is legitimate. Has Nigeria tried to escalate this to the EITI?
Thank you very much. No, we've only highlighted this in our reports that our crude oil has destinations that they go to. But we only produce our reports, and recommendations in our reports are what we just highlight. And our reports is viewed internationally also. So yeah, people are aware that our oil stolen crude are taken to places, destinations which are quite varied. Some go to Europe, some go to some Asian countries, and some within Africa. Yeah, it's within the system. We've reported in our reports that Nigerian crude oil is stolen, and we need to also cap on those people that have a moral responsibility of not buying stolen crude from Nigeria. Like you rightly said, stolen crude is equivalent to blood diamond, in the sense that because you're depriving people of their resources, and they are also people. This is people's asset, the whole country's asset that has been stolen. And the people that this thing is stolen from are also living in abject poverty because they're depriving them of income. We've reported on this in our report, and I think internationally it's well known. Thank you.
Okay, thank you indeed. Of course, we may return to this topic at some other time because we have a lot to discuss about that. He said something, moral responsibility of not buying stolen oil. Where will you get that? Somebody will not buy a cheap oil because you moral responsibility. I mean, it's something
blood oil.
Yeah, exactly. All right, on that note, we concluded today's edition of the program. We'd like to appreciate all our guests. First, Captain Waredi Niswa, Maritime Intelligence Aviation Satellite Systems Consultant for Tantita Security Services Nigeria. We thank you for sharing your experience and thoughts on this program today. Lidam Miti, lawyer, civil rights activist, former president of Movement for Survival of the People of Ogoni. He was with us. He went to, of course, do justice to his case in court this morning. Thank you also for your contributions. And we had Professor Dayo Ayoade, energy and natural resources law expert, University of Lagos. Thank you for coming. And via Zoom, we also had the privilege of sharing the experience of Data Basi George, Director Technical of the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Thanks to all of you for being here this morning.
That's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Join us tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock for a fresh package. I'm Kingsley Osadolo saying have a nice day.
And I'm Kirian Romario. Have a great day.